Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello and welcome to Haman Nature. With me as always is my porcupine friend Tyrone.
What's up, Adam?
Everything good. I thought today we would talk about another of my little Substack articles that I'm narcissistically proud of. This one, let me find the title. I believe it's called "Why Do We Fight Each Other and Who Benefits from It?"
I forgot to get my boxing gloves.
Yeah, I mean, we fight a little bit. It's over quick because I'm enormous. So yeah, let me briefly sketch the meat of that article, just in case the viewer didn't read it, which you should. You should go to hamannature.com, which directs to hamannature.substack.com, and sign up for free to receive an article, thoughtful, I think, well written, short, and punchy, Monday through Friday. And by the way, you can contribute to our paid content if you like. We have interesting bonus shows, including bonus segments of the interview guests that I have. Anyway, back to fighting. I start off talking about a book by Douglas Murray called The Madness of Crowds. I think that's the name of it. Yeah. And in it, he describes the kind of insanity that occurred recently in various areas of races, sexual preference, male versus female, and whatever it is that you call the trans thing. He talks about how, things got better, about reducing bigotry and hatred in society as we became a little bit wiser, a little bit more tolerant, a little less puritanical, perhaps. And then just as it seems like things were getting to a good place, it seems like all these movements just went insane. And now we're at each other's throats more and more, perhaps more than ever. He gives a pretty sweet visual analogy. It's like if you picture peaceful relationships as a train that's just about to pull into the station of where we want to be as a society. And just as it's about to pull in, instead of slowing down and stopping, all of a sudden the engine goes crazy and it careens off down the tracks and crashes into a ditch. And the not so subtle point I make is that if you're conspiratorially minded, maybe this isn't an accident. As just as we were getting to the point where the left with Occupy Wall Street and the right with the Tea Party were starting to get really mad and politically motivated to challenge the banksters and the politicians and the warmongers that feed off of us, just as that was starting to become a thing. It's the darndest thing. All of a sudden, this identity politics started to capture the public consciousness. And all of a sudden, we're fighting about these culture war issues and these identitarian issues. And forgive me for being a cynic, my friend, but I don't think that's an accident. I think people fund, if you're rich and powerful, you fund what you want to see, and then it becomes a thing in the world. And so that was the point of the article.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. Now, I presume that Douglas Murray took the title of that book as sort of a counter to the famous book, The Wisdom of Crowds, would be my guess. I don't know if he was saying, well, there's wisdom and there's madness, and you can find both in crowds. And I always think that that's true. In fact, yeah, there is something to be said for wisdom of crowds, but a lot of times the herd mentality is just wrong. And one of the books I read as a teenager was called Contrary Investing. And it basically said, if you're going to invest in the stock market or really anything, do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. If everybody's buying, you sell. If everybody's selling, you buy. Just because the herd mentality often just goes off the tracks, as the analogy in Douglas Murray's book kind of illustrates. I just saw so it is interesting to think, okay, is there something deeper behind it, or is it something that just happens as part of our human nature, or is it both? Now, I think you and I maybe lean towards the conspiratorial side a little bit, because it does seem quite odd that right as Occupy Wall Street was happening and everybody was calling for bringing these big banks down, that all of a sudden there's this big spike in search engines on the term racism and other things that just, oh, I don't know, just happen to come out of nowhere seemingly. It's almost as if someone's behind the scenes controlling what the algorithms show people. um and I've heard this idea. uh, it sounds legitimate to me, but I guess I haven't personally researched it myself, but I've heard this idea that the British invented communism as a way to bring down Russia. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and you can go back to Machiavelli and all those sorts of things, where it just seems like the rich and powerful are behind a lot of these cultural movements. The CIA funding Star Trek, and Andy Warhol and the postmodernist artistic movement to create, I don't know, some sort of chaos in society. So I don't know. It seems something to that, but there
I
also seems.
generally,
Oh,
I
good.
generally think those theories are quite overblown. But,
Yeah.
but it is interesting that it was Germany who brought Lenin back to Russia.
Hmm.
Thinking that he was going to cause a bunch of chaos over there, and further their interests, not realizing just what a big deal that was going to be. If I should argue against my own thesis, um, because there is a thread by which this could have occurred much more naturally than what
That's
I'm saying.
exactly. That's exactly
Because
what I was going to get
if you
to.
are ideologically predisposed to class struggle, made famous by Marx, if you were a Marxist at heart, you might have noticed for several decades that trying to sow discontent between the proletariat and the capital class wasn't working out. Certainly not in America. In America, the factory worker wants to be the big boss. He doesn't hate the big boss. Assuming that all people got rich, being on in an honest way, there just wasn't class contempt like that. Um, there's a natural respect and maybe a little bit of envy, but not hatred. So, I mean, if you believe the story of the quote unquote long march through the institutions, what these people did instead is try to reorient class struggle Marxism not along economic lines, but on identitarian lines. And so that you have a never ending split of hatred if it's men versus women, if it's black versus white, if it's gay versus straight. You can slice that onion forever. And so that doesn't require the big banks to be funding it, because they're scared of Occupy Wall Street. This could have happened. It's ideological, but it's not crony, not in that way. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably part of the tapestry here.
Yeah, let me run something by you, because this goes sort of to the heart of this show, kind of exploring the nature of humanity and how does that manifest itself in the political realm and in the cultural realm. And certainly, I don't think we can just boil everything down to evolutionary biology or whatever. There's it's much more complicated than that, but it is interesting how maybe things that we don't think about could be a simpler explanation of some of the things we're seeing in society today. I just saw an interview. I forget which show it was on, but with Brett Weinstein, who I'm sure most people who watch the show know. He's famous evolutionary biologist who got canceled and now has his own sort of show and things. He was recently talking about that it's part of our evolutionary biology that we're always on the lookout for danger. So that if you think you go back to the caveman days, you're hyper aware that there is risk in the world, that the saber-toothed tiger or whatever the case may be, or another tribe just might be right around the corner and coming to kill you. And your life every minute is do or die. It's survival every second. So we are something in our biology is hyper tuned to just be afraid, to see the world. Where's a threat? Everything's a threat. Threat. You see everything as a threat first, almost. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm sure I'm doing a terrible job explaining this. But his point was, when your society becomes too safe, too easy, you don't have to worry about food or water or electricity or where you're going to sleep. The world is pretty good. That doesn't turn off your biology. Your biology is still looking for threats. It's somewhere deep inside of us. So now we're not concerned about food or water or shelter, but we're still thinking there's something out there. There's something out there. There's something out there that's going to get us. And so now you start looking at, and you're seeing, oh, that guy's a racist. And you're seeing racism is everywhere. That guy's a sexist, and sexism is everywhere. And injustice is there. Like, there's threats everywhere. And it's because our brains are looking for threats. And because we're looking for threats, we find them.
I think that's exactly right. And I think I can even take the next step, evolutionarily speaking, because I think the circuit that gets activated to run the fear threat through is the concept of the other, the out group, because the monkeys across over the next hill are always going to come get you. So that fear isn't just of bugs and snakes and predators. It's of people that are just like you, but not of you. They're other. And so I think there is a circuit in our brain that not only is built for fear, it's built for separation of us and them. And so that's always in us. We should always be mindful. And by the way, one of the things that allowed us to have a peaceful civilization, a concept that we adopted, a value system to make us fight against the worst aspects of our nature, is property rights and the freedom of association. It's having peaceful protections like that. I mean, the old joke used to be, in New York, a Jew hails a cab and a Muslim pulls up, and the one drives the other to the destination, money is exchanged, and nobody cares about their religion. The peaceful transactions occur because the basics are taken care of. Those simple basics: contract, property rights, freedom of association. And if we abandon those, as we clearly are, well, then what are we left with? We're left with the othering and the fear that you just spoke about. And no wonder we're clawing each other's eyes out.
Yeah. So I'm just making the point that, we you could go down the conspiracy road and say this was all just made up, or another answer might be, well, as the point you made in your article, is that life was getting better. The racial tensions were starting to come down, especially in the 80s and the 90s and all this stuff, and things were getting, it seemed like we're on the right path. We're starting to become a nice peaceful society where everybody's respecting each other. And just as we're getting to the train station, we go off the tracks, and maybe the reason is it got too good.
Maybe
it got too nice, and then all of a sudden people are like, wait a second, where's the danger? And it's a weird subconscious thing that happens on a large collective scale. I don't know if that could also explain it. Maybe it's both. I mean, I do worry about the billionaire class and these people that sort of run these shadow organizations. They're gonna take over and turn us all into feudal serfs. But then at the same time, I just look at them like, they're not that smart. They're some of the dumbest.
They're that smart, but they're not that organized.
Yeah.
Like the old joke about, I mean, no, it's not a joke, but it seems weird to super cultural conservatives that their Republican politicians weren't actually trying to do anything about, say, the abortion issue, just to pick one. Mm-hmm. Well, why is that? It's not because there's a cabal out there trying to, put a fix in. It's because, well, if we don't solve this, we can always fundraise on it. We can always claim that the Democrats are keeping us from achieving our goals. And the same with whatever your trope is on the left. We don't really want to solve climate change. We want to use it to endlessly fundraise. We know we can't abandon fossil fuels. We'd all freeze and die. But isn't it great to use as a trope to make the left hate the right and the right hate the left? And if they're hating each other, well, they're not looking at the fact that both parties are stealing from us every day.
Yeah, I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction, maybe something a little bit closer home for us as libertarians. So you would think, as small of a movement the libertarians are, that we would have our s together and there wouldn't be any fighting among us because, good lord, we are the Davids versus a million Goliaths. But guess what? We love to fight each other. So I know you're heavily involved in the Libertarian Party. You've just come back from a couple of national conventions. So I don't want to dwell on this too much, but to do a quick recap, because I'm feeling a lot of angst about this, and I'm feeling very torn, and it's been very upsetting for me and my wife. We both consider ourselves to be diehard libertarians, but we have seen the split in our own local party, come, what we'll call the Mises Caucus takeover, or whatever you want to call it, and just the division that happened in our local party. We've lost at least half our members who have just dropped out of the party because of what's happened with that. And I think it comes down to, sort of, in a weird way, identitarian ideology. So even within small ideological groups, there can be sub ideologies that come along and create this fighting tension. And rather than us try to figure something out and get along, it just seems like the natural instinct, even among people who should know better, is to default to that us versus them. And
Yeah.
it's like the old school libertarians. All of a sudden, these new school Mises Caucus type guys came in with all their bluster and glory and fomenting at the mouth, and it really just, like, off put, because they came in with sort of a different cultural attitude, almost, or different, what do I want to say, personality style or something like that. And it's breaking. It broke at least my local libertarian chapter. So I know you're way more deeply into it, and the reason I feel so bad about it is because I have friends on both sides. I like both sides. I don't know why there has to be sides.
Well, yeah, I just came back from um, the California State Libertarian Party convention and did similar to state convention in Arizona, and then here in Nevada, we just had our state convention last week. And the purpose is to conduct party business and then send delegates to the national convention in D.C. in May, where we will uh, elect the new board that governs the national party and also decide who our presidential and vice presidential candidates will be. And yeah, it is a weird thing that an organization that is supposedly very principled and exists to fight the state, and who agree, all the people that are in the Libertarian Party agree on like 95% of all the major issues. And yet we seem to despise each other over that 5%, far more than we even despise people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Maybe there's part of it has to do with, you're always a little bit more resentful of your brother than you are some stranger. And part of it is just petty control games. If you're getting kicked out of a position that you've held by some upstart, you're going to be resentful. And part of it is a cultural. If you believe that libertarianism should be thick rather than thin, and therefore endorse a bunch of cultural issues, it should be thin, by the way. That's the right answer. It's just a political philosophy. It doesn't tell you how to run your life. But if you don't agree with that, and
Oh
you want
boy,
to
here we go.
put a bunch of judgmentalism about how other people live their life when their freedom is given to you, well, then you're going to be at odds with people who have the other alternate view. And I am a proud member of the Mises Caucus. We didn't have a split here in Nevada. We just took the whole damn thing over. And from my perspective, it's better now. The previous regime didn't say a word about the COVID crackdown, and they didn't use their Facebook much. In fact, they weren't on social media much, but they did spend a week telling everybody who was listening to them what a piece of garbage Ron Paul is. You know, so from my perspective, they shouldn't be running the party. But my last 3 minutes worth of rant just underscores the fact that we like to hate the other, don't we? We fear and distrust, and maybe those circuits are buried too deep in our lizard brain to do anything about. But we do have the cerebral cortex as well, and we do have the ability to think about things like justice and fairness, and again, private property rights, a republic, not a king's, a monarchy or an empire. And so it's not hopeless. It's just we always need to be on guard for the things that make us fight.
What do you think? How can we approach this differently in our day-to-day lives to overcome some of this type of stuff? I mean, we always hear people talk about localism, and I think there's something to that. I just don't know exactly what that always means. So I've been thinking about that for a while, and like one of the ideas that I've come up with is like, what if I just have like a neighborhood barbecue and I just go door to door and invite all my neighbors over? Because I mean, when the bombs start flying, it's my neighbors I'm going to need to, and regardless of what their ideology is, right? And it's like I think if you just actually spend time getting to know people and hang out with them, that the ideology stuff can just kind of go away. But I don't know how to do
It
that on a large
does.
scale. I mean,
Well,
this country needs healing. There's 330 million people.
true, but ultimately, usually thinking on the larger scale is where we go wrong.
Yeah,
We
that's what I'm struggling
actually only can impact the lives of the people that we're nearby.
with. Yeah.
So I think you're exactly right. Start local, start with your family. Well, start with yourself, then your family, then your neighborhood. And if you manage to set all that right, maybe you can start thinking about, making sure the trash gets picked up. But I think you're exactly right. And when you're at your neighborhood block party over the barbecue, you're going to notice differences in other people, and they're going to do things that annoy you. And I think the key is just to focus on the things that unite you and not on the things that divide you. Be grateful for the positive things and the people that are around you, and encourage more of that. And try to not let the things that are different about them bother you, because they're not that important. And if you start ostracizing people for the littlest things, well, then you end up with a perfect society of just yourself. And congratulations, you've doomed us all.
Yeah.
It's pathological. So let's not do that. Let's not fight. Let's understand what unites us, what binds us. And oh, by the way, those important institutions are how you do that and still live in a society.
Well, great, Adam. Again, this topic came from one of your amazing newsletters. I look forward to getting it every morning, or every day when you put it out. It's great material. It's a quick read. It's a great way to start your day with your cup of coffee. It really gives you something to think about. It's not just what I love about your newsletter. You're not just doing platitudes or sort of catchy phrases. You actually are getting into some deeper thoughts that challenge people to think. So I highly recommend people at least go to our Substack, HamanNature.com, and at least sign up for the newsletter. It's free. Comes out Monday through Friday. And if you're so inclined to donate a little bit and get that behind the paywall bonus content, we love that too. So anything else, Adam?
No, just thank you so much for that high praise. And I would like to thank the viewing audience and listening audience for sticking around with us. We'll catch you next time.